Okay, it's 6:30. We will call this meeting of the Laramie City Council to order for March 2nd, 2021. And I would ask everybody to just join along in the Pledge of Allegiance, however you'd like to. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Let's have a roll call for members.
Humby.
Here.
Gabriel.
Here.
Harrington. Absent. O'Doherty.
Here.
Schuster.
Here.
Felder.
Here.
Somerville.
Here.
Pierce.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
That's 8 present and 1 absent, Your Honor.
Thank you. And City Clerk, I think we had one person that had signed up for public comment. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Mayor, on the downtown zoning district.
Oh, okay, not for non-agenda items. It's for, all right.
Correct.
Good. Okay. Then let's go to item number 5, Vice Mayor. And I think this actually just takes us to B.
Exactly. I move that the agenda be set as submitted.
Second.
Second.
Moved and seconded by Council Member Schuster. All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you very much. I don't see items for proclamations or notifications. We have a public hearing as the next item on our agenda. And that is over to you, City Clerk, for the announcement.
Notice is hereby given that a public hearing of the Laramie City Council will be held at 6:30 p.m. on March 2nd, 2021 in City Council Chambers, Laramie City Hall, 406 Ivinson Avenue via Zoom. Due to COVID restrictions, meeting will be held on Zoom to take public comments on the following: original ordinance number 2023, text amendment amending various sections of LMC Title 15.08 and 15.14 regarding downtown commercial zoning district regulations submitted by the City of Laramie Planning Division. All applications, plans, and specifications relative to these matters are available for review at the City of Laramie Planning Office at 405 Grand Avenue, Laramie, Wyoming. Anyone wishing to be heard should be present via Zoom. Anyone wishing to be heard should be present or may be represented by his or her agent at the meeting.
Thank you very much. City Clerk, I don't know, should we invite speakers on the item that signed up to speak now during the public hearing if they want? If you want, you can always raise your hand through the Zoom platform and we'll recognize you. If you want to wait until later when it comes up on the agenda, that's fine as well. We'll give people a minute just to decide before we move on.
Mayor, just as a reminder for those that may be new to this platform, if you're on your phone, *9 raises your hand. Otherwise, there is an icon at the bottom of your screen if you hover at the bottom.
You may need to move the cursor on your mouse to bring that menu up on the bottom.
Mr. Mayor, it looks like Catherine Casco had raised her hand.
Thank you very much. Yeah, let's go ahead and recognize Rin Cascow for the public hearing. Go right ahead. You have the floor.
Hi, good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. My name is Rin Casco. You're probably very tired of me. I'm here to kind of comment before you guys talk about it, but basically saying we appreciate all your hard work on this, and we support the amendments you've submitted so far. And when you guys cover it, I am here to answer any questions and help with anything you need. So thank you, Mr. Mayor, and yeah.
Great, thank you so much. If we don't have anyone else that wants to speak during the public hearing, I think we can go to do we have anyone else, City Clerk?
Mr. Mayor, I see no other hands raised.
Okay, and there'll be another opportunity to speak to this item on the regular agenda. Let's move on to announcements if we have any. Oh, I'm sorry, City Manager, we can't hear you.
Hi there. Sorry, forgot to push the second unmute button. This Assistant City Manager does have 2 announcements for you this evening.
Thank you, City Manager. It's hard enough to deal with just one unmute button, so no worries. Assistant City Manager, go right ahead. Oh, also for you, sir, with the mute.
All right, can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Apologize for that. We've got 2 announcements tonight. One is from the Recreation Center. Just want to let everybody know that the hours are expanded to 5 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday, and 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Saturdays. Our mask optional hours at your workout station are from 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. and 4 p.m. to close. We've expanded the weight room capacities and returned to allowing full court basketball in relation to some of the changes in the recent health orders. And then construction started, and please excuse our mess. However, we should see no closure or affect the public use from that side as we move through the construction process. If anybody'd like a tour, they can contact Jody at the Recreation Center and she'd be happy to show you around. The second announcement is on COVID-19 vaccinations. I'm not sure if you all saw, but the vaccination subgroups were expanded today to include all individuals in 1A and all phases of 1B. The Pole Mountain Pharmacy will be utilizing their incoming vaccine shipment to host a rapid vaccine event on Thursday and Friday this week at the Old Armory. You can schedule your appointment at polemountainpharmacy.com, and the vaccine call center at 307-766-8222 can help you get scheduled if you'd like to, and be happy to answer any questions if you have anything.
Thank you. Any questions for anything we just heard about from the Assistant City Manager? All right, good. Thank you very much. Any other announcements? Okay. Let's go to disclosures by City Council members. Do any City Council members have any disclosures about any items on the agenda this evening? All right. Let's move to item number 8, which is approval of the consent agenda. City Clerk. Oh, we need a motion. I'm sorry.
Thank you. I move that the consent agenda be approved and that each specific action on the consent agenda be approved as indicated.
Second.
That's a motion by the Vice Mayor. Thank you very much. And a second by Council Member Gabriel. And so now we can have the vote.
Cumby,
Yes.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Harrington, absent. O'Doherty,
Yes.
Schuster,
Yes.
Stalder,
Yes.
Somerville,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
That's 8 yeses, 0 nos, and 1 absent, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. The consent agenda is approved. Now go on to the regular agenda and to item number 11, Councilmember Gabriel.
Thank you, Mayor. This title, consideration of a professional services agreement with Scott Aviation, Inc. for aerial application of mosquito control pesticides. I move that the council approve the professional services agreement with Scott Aviation Inc. for the aerial application of mosquito control pesticides for 2021 and 2022 seasons in the amount not to exceed $202,000 over the 2-year period, and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign.
Second.
A motion and second by Councilmember Schuster. Thank you very much. And Mr. Shevling from City Park staff, looks like you're up there on the screen. Why don't you take the floor and give us the background for this item?
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and City Council. Good evening. My name is Tyler Shevling. I'm the Mosquito Control Supervisor for the City of Laramie. I'm going to give you guys a quick overview of our aerial contract and answer any questions you may have. In January, we advertised for aerial contractors to submit requests for qualifications for aerial applications for the City of Laramie Mosquito Control Program. 2 RFQs were received. And after thorough review from a selection committee, we selected Scott Aviation for this contract. And I'll give you a little background with what this aerial contract entails. This aerial contract is a large part of our integrated mosquito management program, an approach to mosquito control at the City of Laramie. The Laramie Valley contains tens of thousands of flood irrigated hay meadows that are flooded late spring through midsummer. Some of these meadows butt up against the city limits. These flooded hay meadows create perfect habitat for floodwater mosquito species. These floodwater mosquito species also have long flight ranges that affect the City of Laramie and its residents. And once these irrigation waters recede and temperatures start to rise, the tailwaters of these hay meadows become perfect habitat for a vector mosquito. That vectors West Nile virus. And using our integrated mosquito management approach, we have tools that we use to reduce floodwater mosquito numbers and to target our vector mosquitoes. And the aerial application contract uses 2 of our main tools that we have to deal with these mosquitoes. The first tool we have is also our most environmentally friendly option, and this is the aerial application of a biological larvicide called BTI. The BTI is applied to flooded hay meadows in liquid or granular form when surveillance indicates that larva is present in these hay meadows. The bacteria leads to mosquito larva's demise by crystallizing the mosquito larva's gut. This happens because mosquito larvae do not have an acidic stomach like humans and mammals, and therefore cannot process the bacteria. In order to apply liquid or granular larvicides efficiently and to not damage hay crops over large acreages, applications must be done with an aircraft. To put the efficiency in perspective, larval foot crews and ATV crews throughout the summer season may cover maybe a couple hundred acres total with the larvicide. And as we're in the aircraft, in one day, an application can cover anywhere from 2,000 to 5,000 acres, in total about 5,000 or 10,000 acres in the whole season. And then the second main tool we have for mosquitoes is to become adult mosquitoes, is the more traditional Adulticide aerial application. This application is typically utilized once a season to target our peak floodwater mosquitoes and the first generation of our vector mosquitoes indicated by our adult mosquito surveillance trapping program. This application occurs outside of city limits over and around flood irrigated hay meadows adjacent to the city to curb the influx of mosquitoes migrating towards the city from areas outside of our control area. This application covers approximately 15,360 acres and utilizes diabrome at an ultra low volume of 1/2 ounce an acre. The aerial contract also gives the city the ability to quickly respond to future public health emergencies from mosquito vector-borne diseases or illnesses, with the ability to have an aerial applicator on call at short notice to knock down vector populations of mosquitoes in the case of a mosquito-borne illness, disease, or outbreak. The main difference from this contract versus the previous year's contracts is that the contractor has changed from VDCI to Scott Aviation. We found that Scott Aviation's aircraft has the ability to lift twice as much liquid larvicide and about 1.5 times the amount of granular larvicide per flight during an application. This leads to efficiency gains for both city staff time loading the aircraft for fitting applications in narrow windows of opportunity as weather conditions allow. As we all know, weather in the Laramie Valley changes constantly, and these applications require certain conditions for the applications to be successful. During our 2020 season, Scott Aviation was subcontracted by VDCI to do our larval control applications. Scott Aviation was able to complete all these applications on time with great results and worked well with city staff while loading the aircraft during the 2020 season. And then with that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the background updates about the program. It's good to see you here at our meeting. Any questions on our mosquito control program for Mr. Shevlin? Councilmember Gabriel.
Thank you, Mayor. Tyler, could you talk a little bit about the cooperation that the city has with the other, like Big Laramie Mosquito Control District and some of the others in the county that work on this throughout the summer?
Certainly. So we work with the county. I work with the county grants coordinator for the emergency insect management grant, and then also with weed and pest. And then there's the Big Laramie, Little Laramie, Rock River mosquito control districts that we partner with. And the way that works is we have the capability for surveillance. So these districts will do adult mosquito trapping and then bring their nightly trap counts into us, where we will speciate, count, and test for West Nile virus. And then we use that information to help their grants coordinator apply for the emergency insect management grant each year. And then the county will match the grant funding for those rural districts to have the ability for their mosquito control programs also.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, this is a good cooperative program. Other questions? One question I have, if I can, is it seems like we're anticipating a drought year and have been in a little bit of that pattern so far. What kind of impacts do you anticipate that having on mosquito populations? Ms. Shevling, if you're willing to share any of that with us.
Yeah, no worries. I watched the snowpack very closely. And this year we're about 93% of normal right now in our drainage. We've been a lot lower than that, but February was a big month for our mountain snowpack. And usually I find anywhere from 80% or above. We can still get typical flood irrigated hay meadows out of that with irrigation waters. It just kind of depends. The next 40 days will be telling, just because that's when our mountains peak in about 40 days in their snowpack. So that'll let us know how much water is available for irrigators. Right now we look pretty good on the river for seasonal flooding, but that could change also in the next 40 days. The forecast is for slightly warmer and slightly below normal moisture over the next few months. So we're still in the next couple months that kind of tell the whole story for the mosquito control program. So I can give you an update in April when I'm back. But for right now, we're certainly dry, but we have ample water for irrigation.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Councilmember O'Doherty.
Thank you, Tyler, for the good work you do here. And I was wondering, how long do those granules last when they're distributed in the fields?
For the granules, for the BTI granules that we're using the aircraft for, they typically will last in the water column, 8 to 12 hours or so, and then dissipate. The bacteria will disappear pretty quickly after that. There's not a lot of residual on that, but it works well with our program because the flood irrigation is temporary. So the single brood granules are effective because we know at some point the water is going to recede too, so we don't need to invest in those products that have long residuals out there in the water.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other questions from council? Do we have anyone interested in providing public comment on this item? I don't see anyone raising a hand in the attendees, but maybe that someone has notified the city clerk otherwise.
I have received no notifications, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Anything else from council before we vote on the item? City clerk, can we have the roll call for the vote?
Gabriel.
Yes.
Harrington, absent. Schuster.
Yes, sorry, forgot the mic.
Somerville.
Yes.
Cumby.
Yes.
O'Doherty.
Yes.
Stalder.
Yes.
Pierce.
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
That's 8 yeses, 0 nos, and 1 absent, Your Honor.
Thank you. So that motion carries. Good to see you tonight, and we'll look forward to update in April. Ms. Shevling, thanks a lot.
All right, thank you.
All right. Councilmember Gabriel, the next item is also yours.
Thank you, Mayor. The title is consideration of award for the contract between the City of Laramie, Lucky Dog Recreation for the design, provision, installation of a 5 to 12-year-old playground at Undyne Park. I would move that council approve the contract between the City of Laramie, Wyoming and Lucky Dog Recreation for the design, provision, and installation of a 5 to 12-year-old playground at Undyne Park in an amount not to exceed $135,000 and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign.
Second.
Motion and a second by Councilmember Schuster. Thank you very much. I see that we have Mr. Hunter from Parks Department, our Parks Manager, and I believe he's probably here to provide us a background. Go ahead, Mr. Hunter.
Honorable Mayor and council members, we have 3 CPSI certified playground safety inspectors on the park staff. We make it our business to go around and inspect all of our playgrounds at least monthly. We had a few playgrounds in the last couple of years that we have been identifying as future need replacements. Last year, we replaced Laprelle Park. That turned out to be a very nice addition to that particular park. Undyne is a little bit newer playground, but we're noticing a lot more money put into it and a lot more maintenance of repairing the same broken pieces every couple of years. The plastic, for whatever reason, does not hold up to our environment. The other 2 playgrounds will be Washington, Maine and Kiowa Park in the next couple of years. Right now, Undyne Park is kind of it's our oldest park facility. We don't have as many amenities in that particular park as we have in like Washington Park, Optimus Park, and some of the other areas. By bringing Undyne Playground kind of more up to specs, a little bit more safety, a little bit more user friendly, it should add some impact to that particular park. So back in early October, we went out for RFQs with a submittal deadline of Friday the 13th in November. We ended up with 4 submittals. We had a committee of 11 individuals review all those submittals. Through the vetting process, they picked the Lucky Dog over everybody else. We're in the process of going through the contract right now. If everything works out and the contract gets passed, we'll be looking at probably install construction here in the next 3 or 4 weeks. And at that, I will leave it open for questions, concerns, or comments.
Thank you very much. Questions for Mr. Hunter about this project? Councilmember O'Doherty.
If I read this correctly, there'll be some ADA accessible components of this playground. Is that right?
Yes, Councilwoman Aaron. So currently right now, the way that the playground sits, we have 1 ramp kind of on the southeast corner that brings wheelchair access down into the play structure. Engineered wood fiber is great for critical impact, but it's not very good for mobility issues. So staff is out there an awful lot trying to keep everything raked out and flat. With these new upgrades, we're going to bring the playground structure up to the sidewalk level grade. We're going to use synthetic turf, which will enhance the ability for mobile issues. Plus, with the future of playgrounds, we're looking at anywhere from 30 to 40% multi-use play areas. When anything, ramps for individuals to be able to access higher level activities, lower level activities with play panels or musical activities or whatnot. That's kind of how the whole playground world is going anyway. And so as we replace playgrounds, that's on top of our list to make sure that every playground is inclusive. It may not be 100% inclusive just because of how playgrounds are structured, but it will give a wider range of play for those individuals.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions for Mr. Hunter? All right. I'll check and see if we have anyone that's wanting to provide public comment on attendees. I don't see any. City Clerk, do you have any other notifications? Okay.
Not, Mayor.
All right. Thank you. Last time for questions or comments to the council before we go to the vote on this item. Okay, let's have the roll call.
Cumby,
Yes.
O'Doherty,
Yes.
Stalder,
Yes.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Harrington, absent. Schuster,
Yes.
Somerville,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
That's 8 yeses, 0 nos, and 1 absent, Your Honor.
Thank you, City Clerk, and that motion carries. Thanks for coming to the meeting, Mr. Hunter. It's good to see you. We'll
Yes, sir.
look forward to the updates at the playground there. Thanks a lot. Okay, Councilmember Schuster, you have item number 13.
Thank you. The title is Original Ordinance Number 2022, amending sections 15.24.00.A. and 15.24.030.A.1 by adopting the 2020 edition of the National Electrical Code published by the National Fire Protection Association as adopted by the state of Wyoming July 1st, 2020, and this is the second reading. I move the City Council approve original ordinance 2022, amending sections 15-24-000-A and 15.24.030.A.1 by adopting the 2020 edition of the National Electrical Code published by the National Fire Protection Association as adopted by the state of Wyoming July 1st, 2020 on second reading.
Second.
Thank you very much. There's a motion and a second by Councilmember O'Doherty, and I believe Assistant City Manager Fieser is here to give us the background on this. Go right ahead.
Honorable Mayor, City Council. On second reading, just a quick reminder that this is the adoption of the code that's already been adopted by the state of Wyoming. It's basically updated every 3 years, not about, it's updated every 3 years. And basically changing from 2017 to 2020 codes, and be happy to answer any questions you may have. I haven't received any public comment on this change.
Thank you. All right, great. Council members, anything on this? Same for second reading as it was for first? Okay. I will check and see if we have public comment. City Clerk, do we have anybody letting you know? I see a hand from Mr. Glass. Do we have anybody on your end?
That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
All right, we'll go ahead and give Mr. Glass the floor. I don't see him just yet. Go ahead, sir.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I would strongly recommend that you approve this. There are a lot of improvements in the code, especially in relation to data wiring and broadband. And I've been waiting for them for years, as a matter of fact, as an internet service provider. Everything that they've done to it pretty much is good. So I'd say that this is a no-brainer. Please pass this.
Thank you very much. Council members, I'll check one more time for public comment. I don't see any additional public comment. City Clerk, do you? Okay. Council members, back to you one more time before we go to the vote on this. All right. City Clerk, let's have the roll call.
Somerville,
Yes.
Schuster,
Yes.
Stalder,
Yes.
O'Doherty,
Yes.
Harrington, absent. Gabriel,
Yes.
Cumby,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes.
I'm sorry, Mayor.
Oh, I didn't hear you. Yes.
Thank you. That's 8 yeses, 0 nos, and 1 absent, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you very much. That motion carries. Okay. The fire code is updated. That's good. All right. Let's go to item number 14. Councilmember Cumby. Oh, Councilmember Cumby, we have to have you turn on. That's okay. Yeah, we all do it. There you go.
Title, Original Ordinance Number 2023, amending various sections of Title 15.08 of Laramie Municipal Code regarding downtown commercial zoning district regulations. I move to approve Original Ordinance Number 2023 as recommended by the Planning Commission on third and final reading in accordance with findings of fact and conclusions of law, and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign the ordinance.
Second.
Motion and a second by Vice Mayor Pierce. And I see that our standing appointment with our planners, Mr. Cox and Mr. Tini, is here. And Mr. Cox, I'll turn it over to you for whatever you want to share with us tonight.
Mayor, Council, thank you. I was just going to do a quick update. As of the special meeting on February 24th, the 80% lot fill-up was amended to only affecting new construction. The residential parking standard was amended to only become in effect at once a development required 10 parking spaces. And the building height was brought down to a maximum of 70 feet rather than 80 feet. I'm going to leave it short and sweet and be here for any questions or concerns that y'all may have.
Thank you very much. Council members, we have seen this item a few times now and discussed it at length, which was appropriate. Any input from the council tonight before we go to the public and then back? All right. And I see Mr. Tini's here as well, but he hasn't indicated that he wanted to add to the background. So we'll go to public comment, and whoever we had signed up first, I will open it up. City Clerk.
Mr. Mayor, we had Rin Casco sign up ahead of time.
All right.
So a little bit in the public hearing.
Very good. And I see that we also have Mr. Glass with the hand up, so we'll go to Rin Casgow, and then we'll go to Mr. Glass. And
Yeah.
You've got the floor. Go right ahead.
Oh, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council again. I really don't have much to add because as the mayor said, we've discussed this quite a few times. But Laramie Main Street holistically supports these design standards. But we were here when the amendments came, and we completely understand those, and we very much appreciate them. And hopefully this will pass, and we will be able to continue to make our downtown better through development and through community. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'm here for any questions if you have it.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's go to Mr. Glass for public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Well, this is sort of the dregs of a much larger ordinance of which all the good things are already passed. There is nothing here that would be good for downtown, and nothing that would preserve the historic character or do anything positive, I'm afraid. It increases the minimum height of a structure within the DC zoning district to 30 feet, which means you can't build or rebuild a small house even in the areas of the DC district where you still have one-story houses. Anything you build is going to have to tower over everything else, and this is not going to preserve the historic character of the district. The maximum height is raised to 70 feet, while we don't know yet who might be requesting this, I'll bet if we do pass it within a month or two, we will see a scrape off and something huge built, or otherwise, why would this even be proposed? We don't want to increase density in this way, because it's less affordable when you build upward than when you build outward. And all this will do is make things more profitable for developers. It will not help anything about downtown to make either change. Also, one thing that it does do is it strikes the requirement that buildings not tower over their neighbors, and this is going to cause a lot of friction between people. It's going to cause a lot of incongruity. There's nothing about this that's good. As for the parking changes, the only thing that's positive here is the removal of the provision that a public parking lot could substitute for a parking lot for a building. That's the one thing in this entire ordinance that's left that's any good, and that was an amendment which was introduced at a previous meeting. I really think that we ought to vote this down. We ought to discuss some of these issues in greater detail, and go on from there in a more appropriate way. I don't think that there's anything here worth passing. And with that, I would ask council to vote this down. Thank you.
Thank you. Other members of the public that want to provide comment on the item? I don't see anyone raising their hand on my screen. I don't see the city clerk notifying me that there's anyone else. So I'll take it back to the council. Council members. Council member Schuster.
Thank you. After we talked about this last Wednesday, I was very curious. So I went and drove all of the parking lots that we talked about, and the one behind the Whole Foods does have a private parking sign there. It is not for just casual parking down there. It says, "Wow, only shopping at their particular store." So I kind of heard us talking about different parking lots, and many of them have private parking signs on them. Not all of them are open to the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comment or questions? Councilmember O'Doherty.
I'm opposed to this because the height requirements. I don't like telling an owner that they have to build a certain height. Somebody might not want an upstairs. I like, encouraging that, but if somebody doesn't want to have upstairs tenants, I think they should have that right. And then I also think 70 feet is too high. I like the way it's written originally so that it does stair step up. I would be willing to have a maximum height anywhere downtown, but not just this 30 to 70 foot restriction. Thank you.
Very much. Council members, questions and comments? Councilmember Cumby. I'll turn on your, there you go, Councilmember Cumby.
I also have concerns about the potential of a building up to 70 feet being in the central part of the downtown district, which we refer to as the downtown historical district. And I just think it could have a very negative impact if in the central area we were to build a building of that height.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Council members. Discussion, further discussion. Councilmember Stalder.
Thank you. I think the intent behind this is good to sort of maximize the highest use of downtown. And I know there are a couple examples downtown that, where a lot hasn't been used to its highest use, and that makes it difficult for their next door neighbor. And I think we made a lot of progress with the amendments, but I just still don't like telling a developer, what the minimum height is or how much of the lot they can use. I mean, I think that should be up to them. And it's still concerning to me that, we're having an out-of-town consultant, community builders that works for a venture capital firm. And I know Mr. Tini told us the last meeting how, the reason for that is they can help pencil out, how these changes will affect, a developer financially. But I think the developer can and should and is probably capable of figuring that out on their own. But I think that I share sort of an interest in redefining what the boundaries of the downtown are, like the core historic area, because there's some of this that makes sense in that area that doesn't make as much sense for the outlying area. So I'm not in support of this. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Councilmember Somerville, and then I'll go to Councilmember O'Doherty.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Coming into this, where I joined council after this conversation had already been kind of started and moving with planning last year, I kind of feel like I came in on the tail end. But what I've seen generally from what the ordinance started out to be to where it is now is a great deal of compromise. And I want to recognize that, starting with a request and suggestions that came from downtown. And I feel that this is one of those areas where I don't think this ordinance skews too far one way or the other. I think it, as it's written right now, it really is a compromise. I don't think that everybody's going to be happy with every piece that's in the ordinance, but I would encourage us to go ahead and pass this. Just, it's been a long-term project. It's been significantly altered and scaled back down. I actually do share some of Councilor Stalder's feelings on wanting to give developers some ability to do what they need to do, but I recognize that that's not the feeling of the entire council, which is why I was willing to work on those compromise pieces. I think the parking is in a much better situation now. I'm personally okay with the building height at 70 feet. We already have a building down there that's 70 feet, so we're just kind of setting a ceiling. I guess that's what I wanted to express. I think this is a pretty good compromise piece the way it is. I think there's a lot of other conversations around parking that need to happen, around, you know, what the historic district, what that core looks like versus how we do that on the outside. Is that rezoning? Is that redoing the district? Is that an overlay district? You know, what options do we have there to make these better fit these areas? I completely agree with those conversations, but I think right now it would be good for us to go ahead and pass this and then move on to those other pieces. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. As the Vice Mayor hasn't spoken yet, I'm going to recognize the Vice Mayor and then Councilmember O'Doherty. Vice Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I agree with most of what Councilor Somerville said. I feel like this is a work in progress, and I think we need to think about it that way. I think we need to kind of get this passed and potentially go back to the drawing board on those other issues that we moved off of this, as well as addressing some of the parking issues. And like I said, this is a work in progress, and we still need to roll up our sleeves and dig in a little more. So thanks.
All right, thank you, Vice Mayor. Matthew, and I do see your screen is on. I'm going to go ahead and go back to council, and then we'll give you an opportunity for clarifying comments if you want to make them. Councilmember O'Doherty?
I just had a quick question. Isn't the downtown district something that was set by people joining a district so that it's a separate tax district? Isn't that what defines it?
I know the answer to that. Right now, people can petition or request to be removed out of the boundary zone. In terms of inclusion in the boundary zone, I think that's done through a different process, but I'm going to turn it over to Matthew to answer some of these questions that have been raised, and Mr. Cheney as well, from what you've heard from the discussion so far. Matthew, go ahead.
So Mayor, Council, thank you. So for Councilor O'Doherty's last comment there, I think there might be a bit of confusion with the DC district and the DDA. And so with the DC district, it is like a city zoning district, and the DDA, they do have the opportunity to have like a mill levy tax that can go to the whole district. And that's what kind of people are paying into when they basically more or less apply to be in the DDA. And that'll go through Main Street and the DDA. I don't really have many other comments. The one thing I do want to point out that I think might be getting lost in translation is a bit that, you know, we did do these amendments specifically for economic development more than anything, as well as an efficient land use. And I know I have just reiterated that constantly. But the way the building height code is written right now is much more restrictive than amending it to say this at the moment. Because if a person does want to put in a large building that does have multiple uses, such as residential, office, whatever, and it brings a large population to a small piece of land, you know, as planners and as a city that we don't have much infrastructure to keep growing out, that is something we want. And right now, if they want to build even a 3-story on many blocks in the downtown, that's impossible under the code right now. And so we're trying to remove that roadblock, and that's one pretty large restrictive thing that we have in our downtown that is not found in any other zone in the city. But that's all I got right now. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question that's generated, and then I'll go back to you, Councilmember O'Doherty. These restrictions that exist within this piece of code as amended that we're considering tonight, if an interested party were to come in and want to take a look at development, they would still have the opportunity to apply and request for variances on some of the things that we've required through this code. Is that correct? They would still certainly have that opportunity if there was anything in particular that they felt didn't work for their project. They're certainly eligible to go through that process. Is that correct?
Mayor, Council, that's correct, and that stands for current code as well as any of these being amended. I do want to reiterate kind of what the variance, how as planners we can recommend approval of a variance, and that it does have to be a unique situation. And so something like the residential ones that they want to convert a unit upstairs into resident but have nowhere to put parking, that's a pretty unique situation. Or a developer to come in and say, hey, I just want to build taller so I can put more units in, it's not really a unique situation. That the code is the code, and you know there's no reason to say like, I mean literally in the variance application it says the variance cannot be approved based on a cost basis or a money making basis essentially. And so we as a planner we would have to recommend denial if someone was like, well I need 2 more stories to get this ROI on the project or something. But yeah.
Thank you for that. Councilmember O'Doherty, thank you.
So I know that one of the impediments right now downtown is the ability to put the fire safety, the sprinkler systems, and so I'm wondering, because I know it was a problem on 3rd, and 3rd's the water lines are gonna be changing. Do we have the infrastructure for someone to sprinkle, put in water sprinklers in a tall building? Do we have the pressure? Do we have the infrastructure? Thank you.
Go right ahead. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Mayor, Council, we have a number of engineers on the call tonight. I am going to turn that over, but to my knowledge, we do not have any limitations, but with every project, we do have site plans, and before anyone can actually build, all those answers have to be questioned before they actually start construction. And so, you know, we will know if we have enough pressure to actually supply those sprinkler systems. If Brooks or Eric or anyone on the call has anything else to add, I'll let them, but that's all I know at the moment.
Thank you, Mr. Cox. I see our city engineer, Mr. Japp, is here. Mr. Japp, did you want to address any part of that question for us?
Your Honorable Mayor, as Matthew noted, a lot of that's going to have to be handled in the individual site plan that comes up. To fully determine that, we usually go through testing on site to determine if we have adequate pressure. However, I will note many of the lines in the downtown are pretty small lines. It's not 8-inch. It's a little bit older system in that area, but we do have plans hopefully in the future to get that upsized.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you being here to answer questions. Councilmember O'Doherty, did you have any follow-up?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Council members' discussion. final opportunities for discussion and comment on this item. Councilmember Harrington, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Did you have something you wanted to add?
No.
All right, good to see you. Okay, well, we've had an extensive opportunity for discussion on this item and received a number of comments and considered and voted on a number of amendments. So I think at this time, unless I see an indication, we're going to go to our final vote on third reading for this item. City Clerk.
Cumbie,
Yes.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Harrington,
Yes.
O'Doherty,
No.
Schuster,
No.
Stalder,
No.
Somerville,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
That's 6 yeses and 3 noes, Your Honor.
And that motion carries. Thank you, City Clerk. We now have item number 15. And that item is for Vice Mayor Pierce.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve original ordinance 2024 on first reading based on finding of fact and conclusion of law.
Second.
Motion and a second from Councilmember O'Doherty. And Mr. Tini, I see you here to talk to us about this item, provide some background. I know I have a few other staff members as well. So Mr. Tini, over to you.
Mayor, Council, good evening. This item is a request proposed by a member of the public, Dave Coffey. This request would make amendments to the Laramie Municipal Code that is related to development completion agreements, specifically financial securities associated with development completion agreements. What I'm gonna do for this amendment is give you just some general background on financial securities and development agreements related to development projects within the city, to give you kind of some background knowledge. And then what I'm going to do is go into the actual amendments being proposed. For projects within the city of Laramie, the city has a process that requires at certain points in the project for the developer to enter into what's called a development completion agreement or subdivision completion agreement. These agreements are security or and provide security for the community in terms of the approval that was received either by the city council, for instance, or planning or other divisions and departments within the city related to a site or development projects. Primarily, we see development completion agreements associated with site plans. So think on-site developments, a new business, a new gas station, a new restaurant. And then we see subdivision completion agreements associated with final plats. Those subdivision completion agreements are usually much more detailed and include the information associated with all the public improvements associated with the final plat. What's the purpose of these? The purpose is to protect the city and citizens in terms of development that's occurring, and also allows for flexibility in completing those improvements as developments move forward in the process. The request that you have here today before you is a modification to the process that we have in place today, and is providing for additional 2 different options when it comes to the financial security component of the development completion agreement or subdivision completion agreement. So currently today, I'm going to use a final plat for it as an example. Before the final plat is considered by the city council, the developer is required to complete the subdivision completion agreement. With that agreement, they specify within there what improvements are required associated with the final plat and the value associated with those improvements. The developer is then required to provide a financial security or financial backing, essentially, for those improvements at a cost of 125% of the value of the improvements. The purpose of this, as I noted kind of earlier, is to protect the community. What happens after the city council approves the final plat, and because this agreement is in place, the developer can sell lots. There may not be a road, there may be no water lines, there may be no sewer lines in those lots that are being sold as soon as the plat is recorded. And what happens is this security remains in place until all those improvements are in, based on what the council approved, so that the people purchasing those lots never are stuck with the potential, and this is a worst case scenario, of, for instance, let's say, selling all the lots and the developer running away and not completing the improvements. That does happen. It has happened. So that being said, the request, or that being said, often the financial securities that we receive today and our code outlines which ones we accept, often fall into the category of bonding or letters of credit. But also developers are allowed to use a cash escrow, as well as provide simply a check to the city for that financial security. This amendment, like I said, will give us two additional options to consider. So what are those two options that are going to be permitted or allowed within this amendment? So the first option I'm going to talk about is what we're calling a no lot sales agreement. This would allow for the developer to go through the final platting process with no financial security in place, except for a small amount, so 25% of the value of the project cost. But the developer will be unable to sell lots. What this does is it restricts the developer from selling any lots to anyone other than anyone else, and the land will remain with them so that they can begin to work on improvements and complete the improvements as required by council in the final plat without having to put up the financial security. The second option that we have in place is what we're calling cash escrow drawdown. Currently, as I mentioned, the city does accept a cash escrow to be put in place for the financial security. What will be permitted under this new amendment, if it's approved, will allow for the developer to still put up a cash escrow in the value as it normally is required at the 125%. But throughout the project, the developer will be permitted to draw down upon that escrow and take that money back as the improvements are completed. So just for instance, let's say there's $100,000 worth of water lines to be installed. If the developer completes those water lines and it goes through our inspection process as outlined in the ordinance amendments, the developer will then be able to request the $100,000 to be given back to him. This is important because what this does with this amendment is it allows for the developer to use that money that's being financially secured for the project to actually pay for the development as it moves forward. One of the things that I think prompted this amendment based on my conversations with the applicant is as a developer, when the developer is going through a project, whether it's a final plat or a site plan, and they need to bond, often that financial security, if it's in something such as like a letter of credit, cash, or a cash escrow, for example, that amount of money is held in total until the project is over. What that requires is for the developer to then take the same amount of money to pay for the costs of the improvements associated with the development. essentially what happens is the developer has to have almost twice the amount of money to complete the project in order to get the project done. We believe in the amendment that you have proposed here will help generally economic development and the development community complete projects, because this provides them two options to not have as much financial security in place, but still allow them to proceed forward through the project. What's key too with both of these mechanisms is it allows for the city council to approve the project, which is very important in financing the project, especially with a bank. Banks often are looking to the development community to ensure that the project itself is actually going to happen and has the approvals needed, i.e. council's approval, in order to finance the project or provide a loan or cash escrow or any other type of funding, such as a construction loan, to actually complete the project. So with that, I'm going to just kind of briefly show you within the ordinance. You'll kind of see two parts. The first part of the ordinance lays out the two different options. In the first section of the ordinance, which I'm just going to call it Part C, 15-18-030C. In Part A, it indicates that there's this new process called the cash escrow security process in the drawdown, and then references the section that's found further in the ordinance. The second part, when you start in Part B, also indicates the other process, which is related to the no lot sales. You will then see on pages 2 and 3 of the attachment there, which is the ordinance text, really in 15-18-070A is really the process that outlines the drawdown process related to the cash escrow. What you'll see in this information, and a few things that I would like to point out, is one, in the cash escrow process, you're still required to put up the 125% as required with all other financial securities. You'll also note that there's some information in here regarding a third-party engineering consultant. This individual or this group or this consultant is indicated in the ordinance to provide for an option for the city to do the needed inspections so that we can return the money in a fashion that's quick enough for the developer to pay their people. There could be projects, or there could be times when our staff simply just doesn't have the time to administer the process. This provides us that option to have this consultant available and allows us to make sure that we can process these requests or these drawdown requests in a timely fashion, in the fashion of development, not necessarily in the fashion of government and the speed of government. I'll also note that the third-party consultant is paid by the actual developer, so that will be part of the cost of the project. Throughout the project, the developer will be required to have at least 10% of the total cost to continue to pay the developer or the third-party consultant. That's important in order to ensure that the consultant is always available and is always available to continue to make those drawdown requests. Really, the last thing I'll point out too for the cash escrow drawdown that I think for council to see too is drawdown requests are at once a month, and then with each drawdown request, the the developer is required to make those requests in writing. And when those drawdown requests occur, there's a 10% retainage held for each of the items requested. This is additional assurance through the process to make sure that when we get to the end of the project, all the items have been completed, and then at that point, we will be able to release that final 10%. This ordinance is definitely a little bit different than something that my office has done in quite some time. The ordinance or the amendment when it was proposed by the applicant really required a significant amount of staff time in terms of our review and consultation with other departments and divisions. Often a lot of the changes that are requested through my office and through the municipal code, especially related to development code, sometimes doesn't really involve many other departments and divisions. However, in this case, really this was a large group effort by quite a few different departments and divisions within the city. First off, you have Bob Southard, who has been involved in the agreement components that are associated with this new process that's being developed. You then had city engineering and public works associated with the review of this information, as they are going to be primarily the ones that will administer not only the inspections, which they do today already, but this additional drawdown request inspection in order for the developer to receive this money back. Lastly, we have finance and Malia Brown, who has been involved in, really looking at this from a financial side of things, as this could play a large, significant financial role for the city if, for instance, this process was not protecting the city adequately in terms of the development review process and the process that's normally required with other financial securities we receive. And so really with that, that's my really focused discussion and an overview of the ordinance. What I would like to do, if it's okay with the mayor, is there may be some of our other staff members on this presentation that may want to add in a few items. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that might be a good idea to hear from them first. And then after that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. I think also the other staff members probably could answer questions too if you have something specifically related to them.
I think that's a good idea, Mr. Tini, and we've got folks from pretty much across departments here. The city engineers here, our finance director, our public works director, of course, the city managers here and planners. So whoever wants to add to the background information being provided by the council, you just let us know, and you're up next. If you want, and of course, another approach we could take is questions. City manager.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to add, to kind of wrap up the very good overview that Derek provided, that would remind the council, particularly our more senior members, that this issue has been an ongoing one for this community for as long as I can remember, frankly. I've had conversations with developers at least a dozen times over as many years about this issue. It's been in front of council probably as many times as well for the governing body to struggle with finding ways to give alternatives to our development communities. So I want to tell you that I personally am very pleased to see staff collaborate to bring this suggestion to you as requested by Mr. Coffey. I also believe that this is maybe one of the first really great collaborative outcomes of the reorganization of our management team, but that's a whole other issue I won't get into. And then lastly, I want to mention that this process to me that they have put together really is modeled after successful projects the city has done in the past working with our economic development group and the Wyoming Business Council. So what I'm referring to is the $30 million of economic development grants that we pulled down in the last 10, 12 years to build buildings for tungsten heavy parts and powder, for high-vis, et cetera, all of those buildings that we built. And we struggled with this very issue as a public-private partnership. We needed to move at the speed of business, so to speak, to get these companies into their new buildings, get the buildings constructed timely, and get them in operation. So we used a process very similar to the Drawdown escrow process to make those projects happen. So I would just want to share with the council that I'm of the opinion that we have tried this process on probably 8-10 occasions, building economic development facilities. It worked really well, and it was a nice hybrid approach to protect the interests of government and of the city and its taxpayers, while also trying to get these folks moving at a more rapid development speed that would be more typical in the private sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much, City Manager. Other staff folks, you can just remain available for questions. I just want to make sure that you know if you have items that you want to, or points that you want to contribute, you can jump in at any time. Councilmember O'Doherty, I saw you had a hand up.
I like this, except I have heartburn with section 3 on the attachment, and I see that the staff has a recommended amendment. So I would like to move to amend section 15.18.070.A, point number 3, replacing the word may with the word shall, and then add the sentence at the end of section 3, quote, "The city may act in a third-party construction management and administration role if the city engineer determines there is adequate capacity to do so, period."
Second.
And the reason section 3 gives me heartburn is if we have this money that we're holding in escrow, I think we should be able to get somebody out on the site unless it's really extenuating circumstances, then to have the opportunity to hire a third-party engineer would be good. Thank you.
All right, so there's been a motion and a second made on the suggested amendment from staff. And I should say too that I see that Mr. Coffey is here and he's indicated that he wants to speak, and he'll definitely, Mr. Coffey will definitely recognize you and give you a chance to weigh in on the issue. Discussion on the amendment. Councilor O'Doherty, you have the floor.
Just point of information, I just wanted council to see that it's page 3 of the cover sheet, the top of page 3, and it's in italics. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tini.
Mayor and council, I was going to bring this amendment up, but I was going to wait for comments through since we were kind of not 100% sure we would make amendments. Staff does support the amendment. We did include it in the cover sheet because we felt it really cleared up the language in this section just to ensure that we were being specific, but also to allow for city staff to provide an option if, let's say, there's a smaller project or workload is not significant. This gives us that option to still handle something in-house without maybe some of the extra work that would come with the third-party consultant. So we do support the amendment. Thank you.
No, I appreciate that. Typically, we don't already have prepared amendments for items on first reading, but given that that's the case this time, I think it makes sense probably just to get into it and consider it since it was brought by staff and recommended. Council members, do you have questions for the staff on the amendment? No? All right. City Clerk, I know that Mr. Coffey's been waiting, and I'm going to give him a chance to speak if he wants to speak to the amendment. Go ahead. And as he has been involved in this process too, I think we'll also allow for questions and discussion with Mr. Coffey as well if there isn't any objection. You've got the floor, Dave Coffey. Go for it.
Yeah, I have no problem with the amendments. I think I wanted to take a moment of your time, Council, to praise Derek Taney for bringing all of this information together in a cohesive way. It was quite difficult in the early stages of these discussions to get everybody on the same page to understand really what the issues were. And Derek did a fantastic job of herding the cats, so to speak.
Thank you. Thank you for letting us know about that. And I'd ask you to stick around for the rest of the discussion because there might be some more questions and you might be able to provide some other information for us. But I appreciate those comments very much. Council members, back to you on the amendment before we go to a vote on it. Councilor Schuster, did I see your hand or were you just moving? Okay. City Clerk, why don't we go to a roll call on the amendment? I don't see anyone else wishing to speak or asking to weigh in on the topic for public comment. You let me know, though, if there's someone on the phone or anything like that. Okay, let's go to the vote.
Gabriel,
Yes.
O'Doherty,
Yes.
Stalder,
Yes.
Somerville,
Yes.
Schuster,
Yes.
Harrington,
Yes.
Cumby,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
That's 9 yeses and 0 noes, Your Honor.
Thank you. That motion has, that amendment has been approved. Let's get back to the main motion here. Other discussion. Councilmember Gabriel, you got it.
Thank you, Mayor. Very good, Derek, on your presentation here tonight. It makes all the sense in the world to me. Unless you're a multi-millionaire, it can really present a problem to developers in trying to get things done. And everybody knows we have a real housing situation that we need to take care of in the city. And this seems like it's going to really, if it passes, help the developers, and not tie up, like you talked about, having double the amount of money that you need for a project. Plus, you have some options presented in this particular ordinance. So I would imagine that other cities have something similar. Is that correct?
Yeah, we'll give that to anybody on staff that wants to answer it. Mr. Cheney, go ahead.
Mayor and council, what you'll see is cities use all sorts of different methods. There are methods that are similar to this, related to both the no lot sales as well as the cash escrow drawdown. We definitely had to do some digging as staff to kind of find things that would work well within our community. But I mean, as we said, we were able to do that, put something together before, so that we could have this ordinance before you. So, yeah, I think the key here is you're providing additional options for the development community to move forward with their projects.
Great, thank you. And I would also agree with what Mr. Coffey had to say about trying to put this all together with a lot of different people from city staff. I know it must have been kind of a difficult process, but it looks like you guys have been able to come through, and I appreciate that.
Thank you, Councilor Gabriel. Council members? Councilmember Harrington?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just curious. I'm not sure if this may be a question for the city engineer or Mr. Coffey, but do we have capacity for this third-party engineering? Is that something that's going to press our capacity limits for that sort of like specialized knowledge base?
Thank you, Councilmember Harrington. That sounds like a question for the city engineer, but anybody that wants to weigh in on it. Yeah. Go ahead, city engineer, and then I'll go to you, Mr. Cheney.
Councilor Harrington, through you, Mayor. Because of the third party, it'll basically be handled like adding another project onto the to manage and stuff like that. So that third party helps with addressing that task and being able to get out there and monitor that. But we will be monitoring the third party as well. So there will be additional work with it.
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you. Derek, did you want to add anything on that? Okay. Councilmember O'Doherty?
I support this and appreciate the work that the staff has put into it. As long as our city attorney feels like this protects the city, I'm all for it. And I assume he does because he was part of this discussion. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember O'Doherty. Yeah, I want to just echo all those comments about our appreciation to see such an important example of cross-departmental partnership and working on this. I think this is this is a pretty big step, and I think it's coming at a really good time, and it's doing something really important. Other comments from the council member or questions? I have a couple, well, mostly just one question I want to ask Dave Coffey since he's here, but back to you, council, first before we move on to any other parts of this. Not seeing anybody. Mr. Coffey, the question I wanted to ask you, and I see you're still here on the screen, so just whenever you want to jump in, is have you, through Coffey Engineering, have you worked in a community that had a similar program to this previously? Or do you have some colleagues that have, and did that contribute to your initiative for bringing this forward to our council? And go ahead, you've got the floor.
Honorable Mayor, can you hear me okay? Okay, you can. To be quite honest with you, many of the communities that we work in don't have any financial security requirements at all. The city of Laramie probably has the most stringent of all the communities that we've worked in, except for maybe Boulder, Colorado, and Fort Collins. The city of Cheyenne, the city of Casper, at least at the time that I researched it, did not have any financial security requirements, which is important for us to understand because we're really competing with these other communities for economic development, for developers. I can tell you this, that I've had developers come to our business, looked at had us help them look at projects within the community, and have had them walk away from the community because of the financial burden placed by this particular issue. I think this issue will, or this ordinance will allow Laramie to be more competitive in the development arena. And I also think it will allow some of the smaller builders, potential entrepreneurs to look at Laramie as an opportunity, whereas before there was no they weren't financially capable of doing so.
Appreciate that. And thank you for being available to give us some background. Yeah, that strikes me as a big advantage of this program is that it may help the city partner up with some of the smaller developers that may want to come in here on a variety of projects, and I think that's a real strength of the proposal. City council members, more questions or comments? Go ahead, Councilor Stalder.
I just want to echo, I really appreciate the input from Mr. Coffey. This is a great example of kind of looking at economic development from the ground up and the people that are involved in the problems and sort of know what that feels like. And I think this is a great example of staff kind of coming together, and thank you so much for all your hard work. I think this is great.
Appreciate that. Well, we'll go again just to see if anybody else wants to add anything. And of course, we do have all of our staff members here in case anybody did have a question that might have related to something that they particularly could answer, but I don't see anybody eager to ask any more questions. I think you've heard a lot of support from this staff members from the council, and a lot of appreciation for that cross-department discussion. So this is very interesting, and we really hope that it pays some of those dividends that that it looks like it's intended to. I think with that, we'll go to the city clerk for a vote on the main motion.
Cumby.
Yes.
Gabriel.
Yes.
Harrington.
Yes.
O'Doherty.
Yes.
Schuster.
Yes.
Stalder.
Yes.
Somerville.
Yes.
Pierce.
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
That's 9 yeses and 0 noes, Your Honor.
Thank you. That motion carries. So we'll go and see if we had public comments that were on non-agenda items that anyone had indicated they wanted to make. I don't see anybody on my attendees list. City Clerk, do you have anyone?
I've received no request, Your Honor.
All right. Well, then we have your documents for item number 17, and we have an executive session. So I'm going to move it over to Councilmember Schuster.
Did you want to ask council if they had any considerations of future work session topics?
Thank you. You know what? I thought we had already talked about that in pre-meeting, but we do need to talk about it formally. So council, over to you. Open up to you. Just let me know. We did talk in the pre-meeting for folks that weren't here. I think Councilor Harrington about having a work session that we were all in attendance at, but that essentially worked as the ward meeting for all 3 wards all at the same time, just open and on the Zoom platform for the 5th Tuesday. Any other comments or discussion right now? Vice Mayor Pierce.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I've got two items I'd like us to consider. The first one has to do with making some changes, really minor, but making some changes to our code of conduct, if at all possible. If we could do a review of that, not necessarily, a hot button item, but certainly sometime soon this year, if that's at all possible.
Vice Mayor, I'm just going to ask and see if there's support from the council on that.
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilor Somerville. I'd support that.
All right. Councilor Cumby, I see you indicated that as well. And I was just going to say, for your benefit, Councilor Cumby, having only recently joined us on the council, it's not atypical or a departure for the council to take a look at those with every new council that comes in, and kind of periodically take a look at things that we may want to talk about, and if we agree on it, change. So, okay. How about other items of consideration? Vice Mayor?
Yeah, my second item has to do with rental agreements and situations within our community. So if we could possibly add that to our work this year, that would be great. I don't exactly know when we can fit that in our schedule. Pre or post budget, I know, but I certainly think we need to visit that topic.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. My guess is our pre-budget calendar is pretty well stacked up, and I would want to give our staff some time to take a look at the budget meeting calendar, which we've seen, and help us decide when we might have time to come forward and talk about that. Councilor Harrington, you've got it, and then Assistant City Manager, I'll go to you. Councilmember Harrington.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just for the sake of a second, I'm favorable to that. I know it's not typical for us to recommend timing, but given that this will likely have a lot of public input, the midst of COVID is maybe not the most ideal time. So maybe looking at the summer for this conversation, but again, not typical for us to tell staff when to bring things back. So I just wanted to float that out there for Councilor Pierce to consider as well.
Yeah, I just know it's a real hot button issue in our community. So I guess that's my only reference to timing, but certainly understand that we need to get this right. So it may take some time.
Yeah, and time always flies by very quickly. Mr. Feeser, just a second. I'm going to go to Councilmember O'Doherty.
Oh, I just want to point out, if the students are leaving for the semester soon, and summer, we don't have as many students here, I think it makes better sense to have a topic like that in the fall. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember O'Doherty. I can say this, the ASUW student government has repeatedly contacted the Laramie City Council or individual Laramie City Council members about this topic for years, every year since 2019. Certainly I can speak to, and I think prior to that. So that's a consideration as well whenever we decide we want to start tackling this topic. Councilmember Harrington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to say that Council Member O'Doherty and Pierce were both correct. So just ignore my previous comment. They might be right to do that prior to students leaving.
Well, or whichever way we want to do it on the calendar. Assistant City Manager, thank you for your patience while we were going over that. Do you want to add to this discussion?
Honorable Mayor, and I believe Manager Jordan may be more clear, but I'm looking for some clarity on what exactly we're talking about work session on. I heard rental agreement but I guess I'm unclear what exactly we're.
Yeah, I appreciate that question. And I think that's probably something that's worth a little bit of discussion right now as we're talking about future meetings. Agreements, if we're talking about leases and things of that nature, that's not in the city council's purview. I think that was just being used in a general way. I think what we're talking about is a discussion similar to what the council has broached in the past and that have been included in our council goals for a couple of years now, which is taking a look at a city council role in regulation of rental businesses. Is that accurate? Okay, folks that have indicated they're supportive of this discussion are nodding. Does that help answer that question? Assistant City Manager and Manager Jordan? All right. So, Vice Mayor, I think what we should do is, now that this has been communicated, we should wait maybe to hear back from the city staff about potential calendar timing, unless city council folks disagree and they want to get something more definite hammered out. Seems like folks are willing to wait and get a little bit of feedback. City Manager, is that enough for now?
Mayor, yes, it is. Just speculating, I think we'd be looking at mid to late summer based on current schedule. If that seems acceptable to the council, if you'd like to expedite that, we could do so. We just have to rearrange some other priorities that you have.
Thank you, City Manager. Council, given that feedback and the earlier discussion about timing the school calendar, and I saw people shaking their heads about expediting, I think there's going to be plenty to wrestle with. I think maybe that late summer timing might be what we'll need to work with. We'll hear more about it later. Other feedback on that? Councilmember Cumby?
The mid to late summer would allow us time to develop the focus and the structure of our intentions, and then it would, in preparation for presenting it to the public in the fall when students and faculty return for the academic year. So I think that's a really appropriate schedule or time frame.
Yeah. Councilmember O'Doherty?
Yeah, Councilor Harrington wasn't here when I saw that the UW schedule, that the students are all online starting like April, like right after spring break, so beginning of April. So it's only 4 weeks more of having the students, most of the students in town. So I don't think we can get something together before they leave. So I think it makes better sense in the fall.
All right. Thank you, Councilor Doherty and Councilor Cumby. And I think probably that also gives a general timeline for individuals in the community who may be supportive of or opposed to or somewhere in the middle of this type of effort to know a little bit about our intentions in terms of timing. Anything else on this? Okay. Anything else for business items or potential items to be discussed? I certainly don't have any. I'm very reluctant to add anything to our to our list. All right. Okay, Councilor Schuster, I think we're ready for item number 18.
Thank you. I move we adjourn to executive session regarding litigation, Wyoming State Statute 16-4-405, small letter A, Roman numeral 3, and land negotiation, Wyoming State Statute 16-4-405, small letter A, Roman numeral 6.
Second.
I have the motion. I don't think I got the second on that. I'll give it to Council Member Cumby. And folks, it's 8:05. Let's give it just a couple of minutes to bounce over to the other link, okay? So, because my understanding is that this executive session may take upwards of an hour. So give yourselves a couple of minutes.
Do we need to vote?
Well, what I was going to do was ask if there was any objection and then just go to it. Councilmember Somerville.
Mr. Mayor, I don't have an objection, but I might recommend maybe like an 8:15 start to the next session. Give us all a 10-minute break to walk around and, do other things for a minute.
Council members, my suspicion is that Councilor Somerville needs about 10 minutes. So instead of waiting for her, we'll just give it a 10-minute break. And if there isn't any objection, we'll convene that work session at 8:15. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nancy, could you